Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Some Stops Along the Way, the podcast that focuses on some of the most interesting countries in the world through the lens of my work there, as well as looking at their history, culture, and geopolitical environments. I'm Mark McCord, your host, and over the last few weeks, we've taken a little bit of a side road. We've had a couple of special episodes on Ukraine. We're going to be talking more about Ukraine during latter part of year two of this podcast. But also, we've had a very interesting episode with my good friend Gershon Baskin talking about the potential for peace in the Middle East and Palestine. Today, though, we want to shift back to South Asia, to a place that sits at the crossroads of empires, religions, and rivalries, a country whose story is as complicated as its geography. And of course, we're talking about the country of Pakistan. Pakistan is a nation that was born in 1947 out of the trauma of partition, a culture shaped by poetry, mysticism, hospitality, and resilience. A geopolitical actor navigating three difficult relationships with India, Afghanistan, and the United States. Pakistan's story is not a simple one, but it is fascinating. So settle in and let's take some time to understand Pakistan not as a headline, but as a living, breathing country with a past that still echoes and a future that's still being written. So, where do we start? I've given quite a bit of thought, and I'm going to not focus on a lot of the prehistory of Afghanistan. I'm going to really pick up at the birth of the nation itself. To understand Pakistan, you have to start with the moment of its creation, a moment that was both tragic and triumphant. In 1947, British India was partitioned into two states: India, with its Hindu majority, and Pakistan, conceived as a homeland for South Asia's Muslim population. But the idea of Pakistan was never just religious. It was also political, cultural, and deeply emotional. Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder, imagined a modern democratic state where Muslims could thrive without a fear of marginalization. But the birth of Pakistan came with one of the largest migrations in human history. Millions of Muslims moved west into the new Pakistan. Millions of Hindus and Sikhs moved east into India. Violence followed. Communities that had lived together for centuries were literally torn apart almost overnight. So Pakistan began its life with no stable government, no capital, and no functioning bureaucracy. It also began its existence with a refugee crisis of an unimaginable scale. And yet the country survived. It built institutions, cities, and an identity, sometimes by choice and sometimes by necessity. If you only know Pakistan through the news, you miss the heart of the place. Because Pakistan's not defined by conflict, it's defined by its culture. I get very wary when I talk to people who define any country or people group by what they see on television or what they hear from someone else. There's only one way to really understand a country, especially one as complex as Pakistan, and that is to travel there, to be among the people, to really gain some knowledge of how this place came into existence and how its trajectory has matriculated, if you will, since the time of its creation. In the case of Pakistan, it's a country of a lot of different contrast. Conflict, yes, that's what you hear about most often. A breeding ground for terrorism, it has been, and you hear about that a lot. But what you don't hear about are things like Sufi poetry that fills shrines with music late into the night, about truck art, entire vehicles turning into rolling canvases, hospitality so deep that refusing tea is almost an insult. Its varied languages like Urdu, Punjabi, Sindhi, Pashto, Balochi, each with its own rhythm and history, and its cuisine that blends spice, smoke, and comfort. I've had the opportunity to experience all of these, and I can tell you that it's taken my view of Pakistan well beyond the conflict and the geopolitical context of the country. Some of my funniest experiences really have been with these trucks in Pakistan. They almost sound like they're rolling junk shops just driving down the road, although they are very ornate and beautiful in their own way. But we call them jingle trucks because they tend to jingle when they're driving down the road. I've seen Pakistani trucks piled so high with merchandise that they were almost on the verge of tipping over, where they were literally driving down the highway at an angle because of all the merchandise that was piled high onto the trucks. Many of them are belching smoke. They are struggling over mountain passes, jingling all the way, but painted beautiful colors and really a cultural experience on their own. I've sat in Pakistani tea shops and exhibited the hospitality of my Pakistani colleagues on many different occasions. I've eaten its fabulous cuisine. I have sat through discussions in their beautiful languages, and yes, even explored Sufi poetry. And I can tell you firsthand that there's more than meets the eye about Pakistan. And I hope if you're not able to go there, that at least this podcast will give you an idea that this very complex country may be much more than you've seen on the news. All of those things that I just mentioned are there, but also there is cricket, the country's national obsession. It's a sport that becomes kind of an emotional release for the entire country. I've been to cricket matches, and I can tell you I don't understand anything about them. I wouldn't even try to explain cricket to you, even though I've sat through several matches, because it would be like someone from there who's never seen the game of baseball or the game of American football coming and watching what's going on and not being able to explain anything that they're seeing. That's me at a cricket match. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it other than to tell you that Pakistanis are obsessed with it. And their national mood rises and falls, in many cases, through cricket. But when you look at Pakistan's culture overall, it can't be put into just one bucket. It is very layered. It's like the peels of an onion, that when you peel things back, you find so much depth to Pakistani culture. In some ways, it's South Asian. In some ways, it's Persian. In some ways, it's Central Asian. In some ways, it's Islamic. And in some ways, it's uniquely its own. Pakistan is a place where ancient Indus Valley ruins sit not far from modern megacities, where calligraphy is an art form, where weddings last for days, where storytelling is a national pastime. This cultural richness is essential to understanding the country of Pakistan because it's a backdrop against which all of its politics play out. Speaking of politics, Let's talk about Pakistan's geopolitical environment and its most defining geopolitical relationship, and that is with the country of India. India and Pakistan were really born together. They fought multiple wars, and the unresolved issue of Kashmir remains the central fault line. For Pakistan, India is the larger neighbor, economically, militarily, demographically. That imbalance shapes Pakistan's security thinking. The military becomes central. Defense spending rises. Politics bends around the idea of an existential threat. When I worked in Pakistan, did my projects there, you would often hear, or I would often hear, a discussion about the boys. Well, let me tell you about the boys. Pakistan has an elected government and has for generations. This elected civilian government has gone through a lot of different iterations, and we'll talk about that more in the next episode. But behind that government, the shadow government, if you will, has really always been the military. And the locals call them the boys. They're the power behind the power. And in many cases, you don't even know that the people you're talking to necessarily are in the military or are aligned with government. But you realize that the level of power that they have behind the scenes is very important. And there's a reason for it. And I alluded to it just a moment ago. Is because security is a central theme in Pakistan, especially because of its big neighbor, India, with which it has a poor relationship. The military plays a central role in everything in the country. So the boys, so to speak, have an inordinate amount of power. And ultimately, you can talk to an elected Palestinian politician about anything. But at the end of the day, almost everything is going to be cleared through this informal shadow network of the boys, the military. And as I said, I'll talk more about that in the next episode. For India, Pakistan is both a rival and a reminder of the partition. Basically, if you're an Indian, Pakistan is the wound that never fully healed. The result is a relationship between India and Pakistan that's defined by mistrust, by nationalism, by periodic crisis, and by moments of missed opportunity. But it's also a relationship defined by a shared culture: music, food, language, cinema. It's two countries that look at each other and see both a mirror and a shadow. The tragedy is that people often want peace more than the politics allow. So this relationship with India is extremely complicated. We'll get into it a little more in the next episode. Don't want to overplay it, but you can't really talk about Pakistan without talking about its relationship with its big neighbor. But it's also interesting to talk about its relationship with a country that's been very important in my career, and that's Afghanistan, another neighbor. The first time I traveled to Pakistan from Afghanistan, I crossed the Khyber Pass, and which is Probably not the smartest thing to do, and it's quite a dangerous thing to do, but I was younger then. Maybe I didn't have enough sense to know better. But that's how I got into Pakistan on my first trip. Not sure I'd do that again today. Probably not. But doing it once was a very interesting experience that I'll share with you during the next episode. But what is Pakistan's relationship with its Western neighbor, Afghanistan? This relationship is shaped by both geography and history. The border, which is called the Durand Line, cuts through Pashtun tribal lands, and it was drawn by the British in 1893 and has been contested ever since. For Pakistan, Afghanistan has always been both a buffer and a burden. During the Soviet invasion of the 1980s, Pakistan became the staging ground for Afghan resistance, supported by the United States and Saudi Arabia. Millions of Afghan refugees crossed into Pakistan, and many never left. After 2001, the U.S. war in Afghanistan created new pressures. Pakistan cooperated with the United States and simultaneously maintained ties with the elements of the Taliban, a dual strategy that created deep mistrust in Washington. But this is not a strategy that was new to the Pakistanis, either politically, quite frankly, or culturally. Pakistan has been used to playing both sides of the equation. It's been necessary for them to carve out their geopolitical influence in the region. Look at it this way. If you're not sure who's going to come out on top, then why not play both sides? And that way you're in a good position, whatever happens. Of course, one could also argue that that creates mistrust by all parties, which it does. But the fact that Pakistan had this dual relationship, working with the United States and allies on one side and working with the Taliban on the other, is not surprising to any of us that worked there. And certainly it was not just the Musharraf government, which was in place at that time, that was guilty, if you will, of this type of approach. And certainly Pakistan is not the only country that has utilized that approach. But even in non-political or non-military ways, this approach manifests itself. Culturally, it's very common for a Pakistani organization, for instance, to work with multiple partners, some of which have totally competing goals in order to receive funding or in order to position themselves in a better way from a power position. And they don't see that as wrong. They don't see it as disingenuous. They simply see it as a way to do business. And so this cultural paradigm spills into really everything else in society, including its political machinations. For Afghanistan, Pakistan is seen as both a neighbor and an interfering power. For Pakistan, Afghanistan is seen as essential to its own security. Although I will tell you, it was widely believed when I worked in Afghanistan that much of the seeds of conflict in Afghanistan were perpetuated by the Pakistanis. That Pakistan had very little reason to want Afghanistan to be a successful country. The more chaos that was perpetuated in Afghanistan, the more positioning and benefit that Pakistan could achieve out of that chaos. Whether or not that's the case, that was widely perceived by the expatriate community in Afghanistan. But the relationship between these two countries is defined by porous borders, refugee flows, militant networks, and competing visions of regional stability. The western part of Pakistan, the tribal lands, is a really lawless place. I've been there, and it's remote. It is filled with refugees that move back and forth across the border, the porous border, and it is in equal measures terrifying and fascinating. I had amazing discussions sitting in the middle of nowhere, talking with tribal leaders, eating rice and drinking tea, all the while realizing that there was no law that encompassed me. There was no rule of law. It was South Asian version of the Old West in the United States. Lots of guns, very little law and order. So this relationship between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which was born again out of artificial partition, has matriculated into kind of this tenuous give and take, with each country trying to position itself in a different way. But as I said before, it's very common for the government officials that you're talking to in Pakistan, who are heavily supporting the United States, heavily supporting Western Europe, heavily supporting those who are anti-terrorism, to also be talking with the rulers of Afghanistan, the Taliban, and cutting deals with both sides. It's an interesting dichotomy that I can't fully explain, but it's a cultural paradigm that's real. So, we've talked a little bit about the geopolitics between Pakistan and India. We'll explore that more in the next episode. And Pakistan and Afghanistan. What about Pakistan and the United States? The partnership with the United States and Pakistan is one that has swung between cooperation and frustration for decades. During the Cold War, Pakistan aligned with the United States. During the Afghan Jihad, the two countries worked hand in hand. After 9/11, Pakistan became a major non-NATO ally. But the relationship, as I alluded to earlier, has always been transactional. Washington wants Pakistan to fight terrorism. Pakistan wants security assistance and recognition of its regional concerns, especially regarding India. So there have been moments of cooperation, such as counterterrorism operations, intelligence sharing, and humanitarian aid. There have also been moments of tension. The U.S. raid that killed Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad, drone strikes in Pakistan's tribal areas, disagreements over Afghanistan, and concerns about Pakistan's nuclear program. This relationship, especially between Pakistan and India, has created a big challenge for United States foreign policy. Because as much as, especially during the period after 9/11, as we needed Pakistan to be an ally, we also needed India to be an ally. And it's very difficult to walk that line because these countries meaning India and Pakistan, very much distrust each other. So the United States, trying to walk that diplomatic line between India and Pakistan, very often found itself in a tenuous situation from a diplomatic standpoint. Really, the relationship between Pakistan and the United States and Pakistan in most other countries actually is one that works best when both sides need something. It struggles when expectations diverge, when one side or the other expects something that is unrealistic. Let me give you an example of both. The relationship worked well, as I said, after 9/11, when the United States needed for Pakistan to be a central part in the war on terrorism. Pakistan needed the United States and its allies to ensure security in the region. Things worked well. However, challenges developed when it was found that Pakistan was actually working both sides of the street. That in the tribal areas, they were harboring some of the people that were known to be terrorists, that were known to be destabilizing Afghanistan. And yet they were traveling back and forth across the border and being protected in the tribal areas of Pakistan with virtual impunity. That's where these expectations diverged. It was the expectation that Pakistan would be all in on the war against terror. It was Pakistan's expectation that they would be all in as long as it benefited them. Again, those expectations tended to clash, and this created this friction sometimes between the United States and Pakistan. So, as we do this introduction to Afghanistan, or to Pakistan rather, culture, history, and geopolitics, where does all of this leave Pakistan today? Well, I was in the country not long ago, and I'll talk more about my experiences during my former trips during the next episode. But what I found in going back after being absent from Pakistan for several years is that many of the same challenges continue to exist. Political instability, economic pressure, climate vulnerability, militant violence, strained relationships with its neighbors. In some ways, Pakistan is an enigma wrapped in a riddle. Its governance structure seems fairly straightforward when you look at it on paper and even observe it tertiarily from the outside. But it is actually a very complex ecosystem that in some ways is restrictive on the population, like large areas of Islamabad, the capital city, a city that was built as the capital, and Lahore, which are totally controlled by the military. Very restrictive. But at the same time, similar to India, you get this feeling of chaos all around you, or no structure or no order at all. So this is where there's a real dichotomy within Pakistan's society and its geopolitics. But even with all of these challenges, Pakistan has some enormous strengths as well. It has a young population. It's a very strategic location in South Asia. on the traditional Silk Road. It has a vibrant culture. It has a resilient civil society. And it has a diaspora that contributes globally. In short, it's not a simple place. It's not a monolith. It's a nation that's still, in some ways, defining itself. This ancient culture that's still trying to find its way. It's caught between history and possibility. And everything in between that is this messy conglomeration of culture, geopolitics, and history that contributes to both its potential for success and the severe challenges that face this country. So when you look at Pakistan from the outside, it's easy to see only the geopolitics. But when you look from the inside, as I have, through its poetry, its hospitality, its humor, its contradictions, you see something else entirely. When you're in Islamabad and you're surrounded by this political infrastructure at the federal level, because as the capital of the country, Islamabad is the seat, if you will, of the federal government and the shadow government that's behind it. When you look at that, you get, I think, a very skewed view of Pakistan. Go to places like Faisalabad, like Sheikhupura, like the ancient city of Lahore, and you see a different type of Pakistan. This tribal area that I was talking about before, it's lawless, it's open, it's wilderness. It's a place that is really hard even to describe. So it's a very diverse country, and one that in many ways is a study in contradictions. When you look at Pakistan, you see a country that's endured trauma, but it still finds a way to celebrate life. A country shaped by its neighbors, but not defined by them. A country whose story is still unfolding. And maybe that's the point, after all. Pakistan is not a finished narrative. It's a place in motion. It's complicated. It's beautiful. It's frustrating. It's resilient. It's, in many ways, traveling to Pakistan and working in Pakistan is one of the most maddening, frustrating things that one can do. But at the same time, it is something beautiful, something that changes you. And I've seen it firsthand. As I told you, my introduction to Pakistan, if you will, was a trip across the Khyber Pass by car into one of the most lawless areas of the country. Sitting on the ground, eating rice with people that, let's just say, you would likely not want to invite to a dinner party. And yet, even though I knew their background and that they were, in some ways, part of the problem and not part of the solution, I also knew that I had to work with them, and that by working with them, I could help enrich the lives of, in this case, the Afghans who I was trying to, and my team was trying to benefit. I sat with Pakistani carpet dealers who would contract with women in Afghanistan to weave beautiful carpets until their fingers were knotted like this with arthritis and they couldn't weave anymore. Paying them next to nothing, almost nothing. In some cases, food to keep them alive. And then taking their carpets when they were almost finished, taking them to Pakistan, paying them little or no money, taking the carpets to Pakistan, finishing them, and selling them on the global market for thousands of dollars that the women who weave these carpets never saw and that never benefited really the country of Afghanistan at all. Marketing these carpets as Pakistani carpets instead of Afghan carpets. And I've got a story I'll tell you about that in the next episode. All these things were maddening, but at the same time, you would sit with a carpet dealer, or you would sit with a warlord, or you'd sit with a business person or a government official. And they would wine you and dine you, and you would have tea, and you would eat their amazing food, and they would share stories with you because Pakistanis are consummate storytellers. And it really made my mind whirl because of the dichotomy of the experience. I've had some of the most gratifying experiences in Pakistan. I've had some of the most disheartening ones. And I'll talk about both during our next episode. So today I wanted to give you just an overview of this amazing country in South Asia. We're going to deep dive into it in episode 2 about Pakistan. But until then, I hope that you will do a little bit more reading about this fascinating country and get ready to learn more about especially its politics and its culture during our next episode. So we'll see you next time on some stops along the way. Join us every Monday morning for a new episode. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can get updates on future episodes. I want to thank you for joining us again, and we will see you next time on some stops along the way.